ever avoided taking on a big project because you were scared you might fail, even though you were fully qualified to do it? Or worn yourself out taking on too much extra work because you wanted to prove yourself, shifting into overachieving mode? Or spent way too long on a task because you wanted the final product to be perfect? Or maybe you didn't ask for a promotion or a raise because you weren't sure you really deserved it. I mean, surely if you deserved it, you wouldn't have to ask for it, right? Or you attributed your success to external factors instead of your own talent and hard work. Or what about this one? Have you ever been plagued with creeping anxiety before a presentation because you're afraid of being found out, like you're some kind of fake or a phony? You tell yourself things like, I got lucky. I don't belong here. I'm a fraud. It's just a matter of time before someone finds out. Does any of this sound familiar? Have you ever said these things or thought these things over yourself? Most of us have experienced feelings of doubt and unworthiness at some point in our lives. But when your accomplishments are a result of your own knowledge, hard work, and preparation, and you still feel inadequate, you're probably suffering from something that today's world calls imposter syndrome. People who suffer from this syndrome often feel like frauds, like their success and recognition is undeserved. It's a form of fear. They're afraid of failure. They fear success and higher expectations. They feel they can't live up to expectations. They're not qualified for the opportunity, not educated or experienced enough. They're in a place, in a position they don't really feel they belong, whether that be work, relationships, friendships. Despite being smart, skilled, capable professionals who actually deserve whatever commendations and praise they're given. Rather than celebrating their accomplishments, they worry that they've somehow tricked people into thinking they're good enough. And as a result, they live in fear of being found out and exposed. This feeling, this imposter syndrome, is triggered when we are doing something new, like a new job, role, responsibility, getting into a hard program or school, or going for a promotion, and our inner critic decides we're not qualified. That little voice inside of our heads triggers the imposter alarm. Imposter syndrome strikes high achievers just as you are rising up in your career and in life. It's that little, not so quiet voice in your head that tells you that you are inadequate and not ready, when the reality is that you are more than adequate and qualified for the next level. It holds us back from leveling up and keeps us from posting for the new job, going after the promotion and asking for a pay raise, or taking on the stretch assignments that propel careers forward. Think about it. The symptoms of imposter syndrome usually show up when you are doing something out of your comfort zone, such as sitting at the table with the big bosses and having to contribute your ideas, or when you have to do a presentation for the big clients, or shortly after you get that big promotion or job offer. There is good news and hope. Imposter syndrome isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's actually a sign of growth and leveling up. It's an indication that you're growing. It means you're getting outside of your comfort zone and stretching for something big and new. It means you're growing even bigger than you thought you could. Imposter syndrome is actually fairly common. Researchers believe that at least up to 70% of people have suffered from it at one point or another. But that doesn't make it any less damaging to a person's confidence and career growth. Imposter syndrome can cost you a lot. Not just your sanity and mental health, but your success and salary too. Let's look at how much imposter syndrome is costing you. Burnout and stress from being spread too thin cost the average working American $988 a year. Tension from unrealistic goals and schedules costs, on average, $2,244 per person each year. When putting your health on the back burner, your performance follows. Lack of sleep in the U.S. costs $2,569 per person each year. Decreases in productivity and mood cost businesses $3,400 per employee each year. Just by avoiding salary talks and not negotiating your worth can cost you $7,528 each year. And on average, Americans spend over $18,000 annually on unnecessary purchases. This is income that could be saved and put towards a side hustle if you just believed in yourself and in your abilities. That's a whopping total of almost $35,000 that imposter syndrome could be costing you each year. Each year. We've got to do something about this if this is something you're suffering with. There are several different ways that imposter syndrome can show up, but Dr. Valerie Young has identified 5 types of imposter syndrome. Once you know which type you fall into, or types I should say, you can learn how to push past it to reach your goals and live comfortably being you. The first on the list is the perfectionist. You may hold yourself to impossibly high standards. You expect a flawless performance each and every time. If you only score 99 out of 100, or there's a minor typo in your report, you feel like you failed. Unless you do something perfectly, you may never even try. When you fall short of your exact standards, you may feel undeserving of any praise or success. So some suggestions for the perfectionist. Keep your commitment to quality, but ditch the unrealistic expectations that everything you do needs to be perfect. Separate what really does require perfection and when okay is good enough. Besides, let's be realistic. The first time you do anything, it won't be as good as your second or your 100th. The second type is the superwoman or superman. This type is on steroids and caffeine, chest out, head high. I can do anything, take on anything. Instead of merely demanding effortless perfectionism in your work, you judge yourself based on the number of roles you can juggle with ease. In addition to excelling at work, you may also have to be the perfect parent, perfect spouse, the perfect son or daughter, and you have to make it look easy. You're all things to everybody, and when you fall short in any one of these roles, you feel inadequate. Suggestions for the superwoman or superman. Despite what social media, no one is able to handle it all perfectly. Give yourself permission to say no, but by cutting out unnecessary tasks, you can focus on the ones that really matter. Learn to delegate. People will still love you, at least the ones that really count. Third on the list is the natural genius. You measure your worth based on ease and speed. You believe if you were really smart, qualified, and talented, this wouldn't be so hard. You expect to magically excel at leading a team, to manage finance, or when delivering a talk. If something takes more time to master than you think it should, you may give up. The fact that you sometimes have to struggle to succeed means that you must be an imposter, right? Suggestions for the natural genius. Understand that some things you do will come naturally, while others will require more effort. Expect a learning curve. The more you do anything, the better you get. Real success always takes time. Allow yourself the opportunity to work at it, whatever it may be. Fourth on the list is the soloist. You think asking for help shows you're not capable or that you're weak. After all, if you were really smart, you wouldn't need any help, right? You may never seek out advice or mentoring, which leads you to take longer to complete things than necessary. Because you see success as a solo endeavor, you may minimize any accomplishments requiring a team effort. You think your work or idea has to be totally groundbreaking and original to be of importance. When it's not, you feel like an imposter. Suggestions for the soloist. Figure out what you need to achieve your goal. Information, advice, or additional training, then ask for it. By seeking advice and mentoring from people with more knowledge or experience shows you're wise enough to know what you don't know. Think about how much you can gain from leveraging knowledge and skills that others may have. It allows you to grow. The fifth and final type of imposter that Dr. Valerie Young identified is the expert. You measure yourself based on the amount of knowledge you have, and you never think you know enough. The belief that you need to know everything prevents you from pursuing positions and opportunities. When you do go for it, you constantly worry that they'll find out how much you really don't know. Suggestions for the expert. Nobody knows everything, and that's okay. Remind yourself that skill gaps are normal and that it's okay to figure things out as you go. Besides, there are many paths to expertise. Open the door for new opportunities to try new things, even if it's just for fun. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be smart enough to figure it out or find someone who does. If you are struggling with imposter syndrome or something like it, I have some great news. It can be overcome. There are ways to curb these feelings in a healthy, proactive way. You can begin by building a stronger identity, by reconditioning your mind about who you are. Focus on your service and not yourself, taking the focus off and outside of you. Ask yourself if what the voice is saying is true and based on concrete evidence. Ask yourself, who would you be? Who would you become without listening to that voice and entertaining it? Lindsay Kolowich Cox came up with 9 ways to deal with imposter syndrome before it hinders your success. Let's explore these in a little more detail. Number 1, know the signs. We often overlook the signs of imposter syndrome that come up in our day-to-day lives. However, recognizing these signs is the first step towards overcoming them. To recap, you might suffer from imposter syndrome if you feel like you got lucky when you actually prepared well and worked hard, if you find it hard to accept praise, if you apologize when you didn't actually do something wrong, if you hold yourself to incredibly, sometimes impossibly high standards, if you find the fear of failure paralyzing, if you avoid expressing confidence because you think people will see it as overcompensating or obnoxious, and convince you're not enough. Pay attention to your language choices, both when you're talking to other people and when you're talking to yourself, especially when it comes to talking about work. If you find your own success or the praise of others that they give you uncomfortable, do some reflective thinking on where those types of thoughts came from and what it means in your life. Number 2, it's important to know that you're not alone. When you have imposter syndrome, some of the most important encouragement comes from realizing how many hugely successful people, both male and female, have built amazing careers even while regularly coping with it. You'd likely never guess these highly accomplished people like author, poet, civil rights activist Maya Angelou, actor Don Cheadle, actress Tina Fey, have spoken about their imposter syndrome. So know that you're not alone. Number 3, distinguish between humility and fear. There's taking humility in your hard work and accomplishments, and then there's feeling overcome with fear because of them. Sometimes simply being good at something can cause us to discount its value. It all boils down to feeling unworthy. Seth Godin said it in a blog post. When you feel unworthy, Any kind response, positive feedback, or reward feels like a trick, a scam, the luck of the draw. But it is possible to feel worthy without feeling entitled, and overcoming imposter syndrome is all about finding a healthy balance between the two. Golden goes on to write, "We don't have to feel like a fraud to also be gracious, open, and humble." Number 4, let go of your inner perfectionist. Perfectionism, while helpful in certain contexts, can be a major roadblock for productivity. Turns out it can be a major roadblock for overcoming imposter syndrome too. Suffer from imposter syndrome are high achievers, people who set extremely high standards for themselves and are committed to doing their best and being the best. But perfectionism only feeds into your imposter syndrome. When you feel like a fraud, it's usually because you're comparing yourself to some perfect that's either impossible or unrealistic. Not only can no one do everything perfectly, but holding yourself to that standard can actually be super counterproductive. At some point, you need to take a step back and ask yourself, when is good enough? Number five, be kind to yourself. Take the pressure off yourself and stop trying to be the expert on day one. Imposter syndrome often manifests itself as a voice in our heads berating us with negative messages. Negative self-talk is a bad habit. It can heavily influence our stress and anxiety levels. Being kind to yourself simply means changing the way you talk to yourself in your head by practicing positive self-talk. Not only can it help you become less stressed and anxious, but it can help you build the courage to do things that'll bring you greater rewards. Though you may not be able to completely silence that inner critic, pay more attention to and feed the voice that tells you that you can change the world. First, try to catch yourself whenever you have a negative thought, then turn and challenge your own claim. For example, if you find yourself thinking, "I just got lucky," challenge that by thinking, "What steps did I take and what work did I put in to get to this point?" Then you can answer your own question using affirmations, which are short, focused, positive statements about a goal you have. In this case, one might be as simple as, "I worked hard and I always work hard." Number 6, track and measure your successes. When you feel like an imposter, one of the hardest things to grasp is how much of a role you have in your own successes. You might default them to luck or others' hard work, when in fact, your own work, knowledge, and preparation had a lot to do with it. To help show yourself that you're actually doing well, keep track of your wins in a private document. There are a lot of different ways to track these successes, and the metrics you use will depend entirely on your job. You might also keep a separate tab to paste kind words people have written to you via email or on posts and comments. In the same vein as keeping track of your success metrics, keep a file on your computer. Create a personal folder, something that's going to keep you happy and joyous, but reminds you of who you are, who others say you are, and what you have accomplished. When you need a lift, you can go to that folder and scroll through them, or you can create a digital file on your computer where you can get screenshots, tweets, and go back and easily see those metrics, whatever makes you feel good about your work and preparation. Number 7, talk about it with a mentor or your manager. No one should suffer in silence. Sharing your thoughts and experiences with someone else will make you feel better equipped to deal with your imposter syndrome. Share them with both a mentor and your director. Your mentor will be able to help you talk candidly about your struggles with imposter syndrome while giving you a more objective point of view, especially if they work on a different team or at a different company. When you experience with them, you might ask if they've ever felt that way or if they know someone who has. The best mentors are going to be forthcoming about the struggles they've gone through and the mistakes they've made in their careers, And you may find that they have some helpful stories or advice for how to deal with what you're feeling. The more confidence and education you have, the more the imposter syndrome will start to fade. Surrounding yourself with people that are more knowledgeable in your field and give guidance will help you to grow. Number 8, say yes to new opportunities. It's impossible to say yes to everything, especially when you're feeling stressed or spread thin. And we're going to talk about this concept of saying no on day 7. But it's all too often for people who have imposter syndrome to turn down career-making opportunities because they don't feel like they do a good job. When you're presented with a new, it's important to distinguish between the voice in your head saying you can't do it because you're not worthy and the one saying you can't do it because you have too much on your plate. Remember that. So while it might be intimidating to take on a role you're not sure you can succeed in, know that you were asked to do it for a reason. And there's nothing wrong with learning new things and asking questions along the way. And last but not least is number 9. Embrace the feeling and use it to your advantage. It's really hard to get rid of imposter syndrome completely, especially if you've had it for years and years. The fact that hugely successful people have felt that way after all they've accomplished is evidence that it can sometimes be a lifelong condition. That's why the best angle from which to tackle your imposter syndrome isn't trying to get rid of it completely, stopping it from hindering your success. Recognize it, deal with it, know how to get past it. Many people who have imposter syndrome think that nobody else around them shares the same feelings of inadequacy and toxic self-doubt. They think that they're the only ones. That couldn't be further from the truth. And you might be surprised by just how many have 2 or more of these thoughts. I'm telling you, I know, I'm a witness. I was there. Imposter syndrome is 100% normal. It's our way of staying inside of our comfort zone. But if you don't do anything to manage it and overcome it, it can stand in the way of your success in reaching your dreams. Imposter syndrome robs even the highest achievers of their motivation each day. To overcome this burden and strive for your career and financial goals, you must act like a boss. Whether you want to buy your first house or earn a raise this year, kick your failure mindset to the curb. The power of your mindset is key to staying confident with whatever life throws at you. If you are asking yourself, how can I get past this and move on to the next level? Know that you can do it. Once you have the right tools and strategies under your belt, and once you have the coaching and guidance from someone who has been in your shoes and has come out on the other side, you will see that there are ways to overcome this. Stop doubting your abilities and start knowing that you've got this. You're where you belong, stomping with the big dogs. You belong in every room you step in, so act like it. That's what Jack A. Daniels says. We know what the feeling is called. We know others suffer from it. We know a little bit about why we feel this way. And we now know how to handle it. Invite it in and remind ourselves why it's here and what it means. Whenever you hear that negative voice in your head, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, if you're talking, I know that I can do this. Now let's get to work. A fake, a phony, an imposter, that's not who you are. It's time to come from behind the shadows, from hiding, and recognize your 100% real, authentic self, your talents, your gifts, everything that you have worked hard for and accomplished. You did it. Let go of that skeptic in your head that's telling you otherwise and work your mojo. It's time to come out of the darkness and step into the light and appreciate who you are. So I have a challenge for you. Couple of things I'd like for you to do. I want you to make 2 lists. The first list, I want you to write down every single success, every single win that you've had over the last 3 years. Gonna span back a couple of years because I feel like COVID really counts, but maybe you had some wonderful, awesome wins during the last couple of years, even with COVID. That's even better. Write down everything. I don't care how big, how small, nothing should be left off of this list. Your second list is going to be your praise list. I want you to think back about every accomplishment, not accomplishment, but compliment you've been given, any accolades, area of praise that people have given to you about what you've done, whether personally or professionally. Nothing is too big or too small again. And I don't care how insignificant it may seem, write it down on your list. Once you have these 2 lists together, I want you to review it and really take it all in. Let it sink into your mind and recognize and realize that these were things that you accomplished. You're not a fake. You're not a phony. You are the real deal. Go ahead and pat yourself on the back. It's okay. Go ahead and treat yourself to something. It's okay. You've done well and you deserve it. Take those lists, save it as a screensaver, save them in your phone, places that you can see them, hang them up in your bathroom mirror so that you can remind yourself of what you've done and the things that other people see in you so that you can get rid of that inner skeptic that's telling you who you're not and what you'll never be, and that people are going to realize who you are. They already do realize who you are, and that's why they're saying great and wonderful things about you. So I want you to remember and just keep in mind that you are not an imposter. You're 100% the real deal. Remember, everything begins with a thought. So get your mind right. I'll see you in a couple of more days with our final day of 7 days to a savvy mindset. Thanks.